this is much higher, then that would give speculators second thoughts. I know it sounds very simplistic, but I don't live here, I don't know too much. I just want to contribute whatever I've learned from living overseas. Thank you.
Maybe, Salman, you're in the City Council. We've had the Penang Island local plan approved in 2008, and until now it's exactly a mirror of what's happening in Kuala Lumpur. They had a local plan approved in 2008, but it was not gazetted. Do you have any idea why would a local plan solve some of these problems?
Local plan is just like one of the basic things that you need to have to control development and to make sure that there is kind of equity, ownership equity, and you balance private interest with public interest. So it's just a basic thing. It's not the be-all and end-all. But it actually protects people who live here. So that means if you live in a residential area, you don't suddenly see some of these houses converted into commercial or industrial. If you live in a condo or whatever, then you don't see, and you don't see suddenly this huge high-rise right next to you, which is going to put so much strain on traffic and other kinds of resources. So local plan is basic, okay? So why have we not got our local plan yet? I don't know, because I think this was promised already in 2008, and the same thing happened in Kuala Lumpur. And in the meantime, many guidelines are being changed. So of course, the planning department also, they say, oh, we cannot gazette it yet because we have to revise the local plan because there have been so many changes. But this is the chicken and the egg, okay? You can never stop the change and then go and gazette the local plan. So the local plan gives citizens a chance to participate. So, it gives them a right. I mean, they have a right to public participation. We have a very good Town and Country Planning Act. But somehow Malaysian cities, by and large, have not conformed to the provisions, where you can have a local plan. In the meantime, we have a structure plan, 2007 to 2020, and even then, I can see that many of the planning guidelines already could be, it's arguable that it's contravening the structure plan. So this is things that should be debated, because structure plan, maybe it doesn't outline everything in detail, but the spirit of the structure plan is something that is kind of a right for citizens to be to expect. So I just want to talk about something that someone asked, which is about overbuilding and also about public transport and reclamation. So all these things are interrelated. Okay, now there's this idea of smart growth. Smart growth means that you take, the city that you have, you intensify the use. Okay, some people say that it means building higher, but actually, it is actually increasing the density and the use. You want to allow the population to increase by people moving in without necessarily increasing the number of cars, increasing the number of unused buildings, and so forth, So you want to make it more efficient. You want to make the city more efficient. That's smart growth. What is the opposite of smart growth? Can anyone guess? Okay, the opposite of smart growth is urban sprawl. This is exactly what we have now. Actually, we have urban sprawl. You can't really see it because we are hemmed in between the hills and the sea. And there's nowhere to sprawl. So we're sprawling up into the hills and we're sprawling into reclamation. Okay, so when you build high density, I'm not saying that high density is bad per se, but high density nodes have to be linked by public transport. When you don't have public transport linking high density developments, you're heading for a big disaster, and that is traffic jams. We have as many vehicles or more vehicles than we have people. So this is really, bottom, as you said, So what are we doing to make this growth smart? So we do want some sort of growth, of the economy of the city, to make the city better and so forth. But how is it? Is it efficient to build, condos which are most of the time not occupied and then which are not well linked? So you just have to see the situation on the ground. Are you going? For me, the model of sustainable development is Penang as it used to be. That's why heritage is so important to me. Because even people of this generation, they remember that when they were growing up, they could swim in the sea, they could swim in the river, they could play in the streets, they could, they enjoyed their childhood, they felt connected, they had neighborhoods, they could connect with other children, it was safe. So that to me is the model. So why, we need to bring back some of that for our children, because they are going to inherit the Penang from us.
What about the argument that Penang's not getting money from the federal government and we need to reclaim land to sell it, and otherwise how are we going to fund our public transport?
Public transport, the most important thing is to restrict cars. I also drive. I would like to use more public transport. I would like to walk. Yeah, just restrict cars. You can have bus lanes. You don't need to build extra infrastructure. You can segregate. You can just put something to segregate the bus lanes from the car. And the Penang Transport Master Plan, I won't go into it right now, but it's basically one LRT line and 2 big highways over the hills. So to me, that is not essentially a public transport plan. Because a public transport plan is a network of public transport. You can get from A to B, you can go the last mile, either by walking or cycling or public transport. And that is a proper public transport plan. So we're still lacking that. We still don't have that. And at the moment, what we can do now are incremental changes. But incremental changes do help. I mean, I really welcome this free bus thing. But in addition to free buses, we should have bus lanes. And myself, as a sometime car driver, I'm willing to give up my right to driving, because I think that the good of the benefit of the majority should outweigh the benefit of the car users.
We've heard calls for separate bus lanes for Penang, and I think maybe the state government is reluctant to upset the car drivers or the motorists. What kind of a trade-off is going on here?
Okay, actually I would like to answer that, but first of all, just to pick up on Judy, she talked about real property gains tax. No, I agree. Actually, so that's one of the things that we discussed back when I earlier mentioned when we did housing study in Penang Institute. And of course, capital gains tax, that's a federal tax. It's not something that we can impose. But what we did, actually, we looked at how we can do something to that, or at least similar to a tax, is we actually introduced something called an approval fee, which is 3% for foreign purchases. So if you're a foreigner and you want to buy properties in Penang, you have to pay an additional 3% approval fee. We cannot call it a tax for legal reasons. And we also put 2% approval fee for properties if they are sold within a certain number of years. So these are small measures, but also designed to sort of mitigate the issue of speculative investment that you were mentioning. So we come back to bus lanes. Actually, I've had, I recall this very clearly, personal discussions with the Chief Minister himself, and he himself said, we do want to build bus lanes, but first of all, no, you're right. Of course, once you close roads, you make a lot of car users unhappy, and car users are voters. And of course, as a government, we also have to bear that in mind. That's the reality of it. But I think what the Chief Minister also says is that, firstly, we don't have enough buses. Rapid Penang just does not provide enough buses. And basically by paying for free buses, in Georgetown we have the new feeder ones, in Pulau Tikus, it's all being paid for by the state government. It's not free, it's free for people to use, but the state government is paying for it.
I had a discussion with Rapid Penang, and they said that they actually have about 300 buses, but the problem is they're only about 60% full. And so something is stopping people from...
Yeah, but it's easy to say that when you take an overall number. We don't have enough buses on the routes that need buses, and part of the problem is also connectivity, the last mile problem, the feeder problem, and which is what we're trying to address. So the whole idea of now introducing these free feeder services is so that people can get connected to the main routes. You're right, if you look at 101, that route is always full, right? But then there are also other places that are not full, and part of the problem is connectivity. you won't take a bus if it's so inconvenient. I think, we have, personally, it's faster to cycle, right? I saw your video, it's faster to cycle from Tanjung Bunga to Gurney than to take a bus. That's incredible. Stuart, when he was working in the Penang Institute, once tried to take a bus from Penang Institute to PDC where we had a meeting. It took him 2 hours. 2 hours. It's not feasible at all, right? And of course, before we want to talk about bus lanes, we want to ensure that the bus network actually works. But secondly, we also feel that perhaps the best way to have that is to first build alternative roads. So some of these bypasses that we're trying to build with the Penang Transport Master Plan is to provide alternative access so that, and I quote the Chief Minister himself, some roads in Georgetown can be closed off for buses.
Andrew, you have experienced cycling from Tanjung Bunga to Gurney Paragon and all that.
Yes, yes.
Could you tell us some of the challenges you've experienced?
It's a social experiment which I want to do a series right now, because I do believe that to engage young millennials today is to make funny videos so that they can, hey, I want to try that too. So the first time I tried taking a bus, walking from Tanjung Bunga to a bus stop was not there. Need local knowledge and here's a bus stop. And then people will stay and know that that is a bus stop. Occasionally you have cars parking that side as well. So it took me about nearly 50 minutes to get to Paragon. Okay, plus waiting and all the way there, and then stop the nearby bus stop and get there. So the second one I tried was I want to cycle there. So risking my life. So from Tanjung Bunga cycle go and things like that. It's quite challenging. And that time the Tanjung Tokong bicycle lane was already ready, and I didn't know. I thought that it was a pedestrian pathway, and I don't dare to use it too. And in fact, it's not only me. Everybody don't use the bicycle lane even though it's ready. Maybe there's some issue with that, but a lot of people still use the road. Maybe because it's faster, rather than going to the pathway, go up, down, things like that. My third episode is that I'm going to take a boat from Tanjung Bunga to Gurney Drive. Because of my film, which I did, I've been making friends with some fishermen. I say, hey, Abang, if you want to do this experiment, I think boat can get faster to Paragon. But the problem is they have a reclamation there. I can't get into that, and it's fence. So they took me all the way to the Paramount area, and from there you take the link bike, cycle all the way to Paragon. You see, talk about smart city. The people also have to be smart to live in the city. Try to find a way, to cheat around the back lane and to adapt to it. And again, millennials has ideas, including myself. I think you just need to encourage people to try it out, and so much knowledge can be get from people, rather from a top-down idea. Yeah.
Okay, thanks. So you mentioned reclamation again, and perhaps we also haven't explored water-based transport fully as well. Maybe Surin can tell us, what do you think reclamation today is really necessary?
Thank you, Scott. Reclamation to me has always got to be the last issue, right? And this is where probably we have to start thinking more in a kind of inclusive and non-territorial manner, right? So I don't think Penang can just think of Penang as its own problem, and that is not connected to the rest of the country. So I think there has to be better interstate collaboration engagement. Now, an interesting product of this, by the way, is the Kulim High Tech Park. Because at the time of the premiership, the chief ministership of Koh Kun, at least he had the foresight, and also he realized that we can't keep on building industrial areas in Penang. So he actually talked to the government. Of course, it helped that both state governments at that time were on the same side, right? But the interesting thing was that again, a lot of the industries, the MNCs in Penang, agreed to set up their factories in Kulim, in Kedah, outside of the borders of Penang. But they had, they still work in an integrated manner, right? Because they have some facilities in Penang, some facilities in Kedah, but at least they had more land there, more resources. So I think that is the way it should work. I think that it has been done before. KL and Selangor, for example, it's so interconnected, right? You don't really feel that you're going out from KL into rigid, right? It almost feels like the whole place just functions as a kind of integrated unit. Of course, they have their own problems, but I think Penang needs to see things in that way as well, and not just think of, okay, I need to add more land on my side, but how about the land that's on Kedah? Why can't you work closer with the Kedah state government and actually help each other in that sense?
Thanks. Any more questions on the floor? 1, 2, 3. Okay. Mike, you can go first.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Mike Gibby. I've lived in Penang for 6 years, and like I think everyone here this morning, I love Penang. I'll get to my question in just a moment. My attention this morning was drawn to the latest issue of Penang Monthly, which has a cover article, Speedy Growth for Cruise Tourism. And one of the articles is entitled Eco-Engineering Penang's Coastline, which brings me to what I want to ask about. The theme of this morning is sustainability, and land reclamation keeps being mentioned. Okay, here's my question. How can we have land reclamation which is leading to siltation at Straits Key, that was mentioned by the sailor, that is leading to siltation between Jarajak and Queens Bay? How can we have all this siltation if there are EIA processes going on? Or are there simply no effective EIAs? Thank you.
Second question over there. Over here.
My question relates, I'm Mariam Lim, not born in Penang but made Penang my home for the last 45 years, and I'm still not considered a Penang land. Sad but true. Anyway, I do love Penang. And the question I want to raise relates to what is sustainable development for the tourism industry. We talk of the cruise ships. I talk of the tourist buses in relation to public transportation and making bus lanes. If we make bus lanes, we should exclude these humongous double-deck vehicles that transport tourists and clog our streets. Clog the major entry point to Gurney Drive, the roundabout, where there are double yellow lines, and I constantly harass YB Yatsuhui about this. How come they get away with murder? And it was explained to me, oh, we don't have jurisdiction over these huge vehicles because they are controlled by SPAC. So, you know, we cannot impose, we cannot clamp them, we cannot touch them. So they continue to ignore these double lines. They park there, and it takes you 45 minutes to get from one end of Gurney Drive to the other.
Okay, thanks. Thank you. Martin.
Well, I'm a Penang guy. Sorry, you have to take 45 years to qualify. Penang people are very jealous before they qualify to be Penang guy. And my childhood and young adult life was spent in the environment, so we came up as natural environmentalists. Then I went to the UK and did my economics degree there. Thank you to the British government for having universities. You didn't fund me, but you had universities there that were very good. I came back to USM and taught there. So I became a kind of economist, you might say. And then after that, I became an environmentalist again because I joined the Consumer Association and the local groups. Yeah. So this question of the mix between economics and environment that Zairil was talking about is always preoccupying me. And I think because the world has changed, it has changed because we have not respected the environment as an economic asset. We don't respect it as nature, never mind. We don't respect it as economic. So we need a paradigm shift. Instead of saying we need growth, and then there are economic, environmental side effects that we'll try to solve by talking to the fisherman and giving him a job in straight ski instead. Do the other way around, in which the environment is the king, and the economics has to fit itself into the environmental constraints. That is the paradigm shift that we need. So I'll give you 3 examples. Otherwise, if we don't take care of the environment, it hits us back in the economic side. Okay? For example, the floods. Now you talk to YB Chow, he will tell you we got some pilot projects and it may cost hundreds of millions of ringgit. The state will come out with something, but if you really want to improve the drainage system to control the floods, you need billions, and you're talking of Penang Island, bro. Billions. And then Swamping taught us that, well, you can have flood control, but what about flood prevention? So if we don't prevent the development in the hills, and we get rid of our sponge city by destroying all the sponges, then the floods will come in, and even the billions of dollars for drainage will not be enough. So what are we doing about hill development? If there's one thing that is overdeveloped, it is the development in the hills. I know that the state has guidelines and so on. The problem is that we have loopholes that are much bigger than the guidelines.
Thanks, buddy.
Okay? And then we are using the loopholes to escape, to say that we have the best guidelines in the country, but we have also the worst hill development in the country. How can these 2 things happen? Because of the loopholes.
So there's
other examples on the transport and the recognition that we have done at that time.
Thanks. So the hill development the hill, and is there a paradigm shift changing the way we look at the economy in relation to the environment?
I think as far as, I think Martin himself has already said, we do have very stringent hill-slope development. I think we all good. Martin himself knows, and just for everyone's benefit, in Penang we do not allow any development above 76 meters from sea level. In the rest of Malaysia it's 300 meters, so you can develop hills up to 200, 250 meters in Perak, in Kedah, in Selangor. But in Penang, we do stick to this very, I would say quite stringent guideline. I think as far as and this applies to reclamation as well. Everything that we want to do, I don't think the state government does not comply with whatever guidelines are there. Even when it comes to reclamation, obviously reclamation, if done poorly, can result in obviously disastrous consequences. But I know for a fact that the state government, in trying to reclaim these areas, are obviously also imposing whatever compliance and whatever guidelines and whatever legal laws available on the people doing the reclamation. And that is as far as obviously we are able to do. The EIA, environmental impact assessments, DOE obviously has jurisdiction over these things. They all have to be adhered to and they all have to be complied to. I think beyond that, then that I would think that's a separate discussion. But as far as the state is concerned, any kind of development has to comply, including hill-slope development and including reclamation. And I would also agree with Surin when he says that reclamation should not be the first choice. It isn't the first choice. In fact, Sri Tanjung Pinang reclamation wasn't approved by our administration. The one that we approved is essentially the Southern Reclamation Scheme, and in approving that actually took into consideration. So the original plan from Chong Yu's time was to reclaim the middle bank. And after doing studies, we actually decided that because of the biodiversity and other factors, that we would not reclaim the middle bank, and to reclaim on the southern side instead, based on studies and reports that we did. So I think, again, it's not first choice, but it's also a choice that we feel, at least the state honestly feels, that there is little choice because we do need funds to develop, we do need infrastructure, and we just simply don't have the money. And this is one way that we can do. It's a bit of creative it's a creative way of coming up with revenue, but it's one that we have little choice in doing.
Okay, thanks. Mariam's question about the tour buses.
Okay.
How is it controlling tourism in Georgetown?
I think we should just ban tour buses. The only good tourist, is walk. A tourist who walks, cycles, and takes public transport, and also the shared mobility. Now there's Uber and Grab. There's so many options, and of course, in our public, we should always have this hierarchy. First, people who walk, then people who cycle. And by the way, MP has a very good bike share system called Linked Bike. You should try it. It's very safe to cycle around Georgetown. I dare not cycle to Tanjung Bunga, but around Georgetown is perfect. And then bus, and then Uber and Grab, and then finally at the lowest end of the hierarchy are private cars, right? And then I think lower than that is tour buses. So if we get this hierarchy right, then we can solve a lot of our transport problems. So it's a matter of how do you change the paradigm? Because as you can see in many European countries, they know that climate change is here. We don't have a choice. We cannot say that we just want to, that our lifestyle is not negotiable. We cannot say that because we are compromising, we're compromising the planet for the future generation. So we have to change. We have to change our lifestyle. We have to change our planning strategies. What do we allow? What don't we allow? We have to change all that. We have to be very radical and get on the bicycle.
Okay, thank you very much, Salma. I think that wraps it up quite nicely. I'd like to thank our distinguished panel for their views, and all of you for coming here on this day, and the British High Com for organizing this and helping to organize this in Penang. So thank you very much, and I hope to see you all again.